You know that feeling when you're like, why isn't there more of this? The show is so good. And there's certain shows where there's 10,000 episodes. And then there's ones where it's like, you can only find seasons 1 and 4, and you're pulling your hair out trying to be like, I've never pirated anything, but I'll steal it if I have to. That was how I felt when I started to get really hooked on Black Butler, that I think is just incredible.
Oh, it's coming back. Yeah. It's coming back. Like
he's like, I'm on top of it. I got it.
Very excited.
After like a 10-year hiatus.
Yeah.
Coming to you from Crunchyroll HQ, this is The Anime Effect, each week bringing you the latest news and views from the shows you love. It's pop culture with an anime lens. Today, we're talking to the David Dastmalchian. You know him from The Dark Knight, The Suicide Squad, Oppenheimer, Blade Runner 2049.
Mm-hmm. Everything.
Everything. His latest film, Late Night with the Devil, just hit streaming services, and it's exclusively on Shudder. We caught up with him remotely this week, and we'll be sharing our conversation about how anime has impacted his work later in the episode.
Yeah, I'm excited. Like, talking to a true horror fan is always fun, because... Yeah. If you know, you know. Like, I feel like the community of horror fans is so appreciative of this wacky stuff that we see on screen, so...
Yeah, and we'll talk about it more in the interview, but this movie is absolutely fantastic. Mm-hmm. Definitely worth your time. But first... Of course, you know, we have some news to discuss, like Hayao Miyazaki landing in the Times list of most influential people, the first trailer for Look Back that was just released, a classic beat-em-up game that is getting a Comedy Central animated show.
I can't wait to hear you talk about this one, honestly. Because I can feel you have opinions.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And an escape room opening in Japan this year that is themed around one of our favorite animes.
Uh-huh.
And we're going to bring that to you today on The Anime Effect.
For sure.
I'm your host, LeAlec Murray.
And I'm Leah President.
And we're going to see just how powerful the effect of anime really is.
And you may notice, you know, another person is gone from the room again. We didn't bring the cutout this time.
Cardnick had a meeting.
Yeah. So just imagine his like ghost is here. Maybe we can like Photoshop him and take a picture.
We get somebody to do it.
Yeah, but our fearless leader is on vacation. Well-deserved.
Yeah,
well-deserved.
He will join us next week. It's fine. We don't need Nick.
Sufficient power.
He can enjoy his beach episode.
That's funny. He is having like a beach episode.
Yeah, I mean, he had his Fall Out Boy training arc. Mm-hmm. He had a beach episode. I'm pretty sure there's like the Eye of the Tiger.
Yeah, he's practically like a shoujo now because like he's got all the filler episodes.
He does. I'm sure there will be more. Okay. What did you get into this weekend? What did your weekend look like, Leah?
So many of you who have been, I mean, if you've been listening to the podcast since episode 1, we had like a video game check-in.
Yep.
And I mentioned I was playing through all of Ace Attorney.
Yes.
I have fallen off. I must admit,
now
it is kind of grueling.
Is it a steep fall off or is it just a gradual like?
It's like a steep fall off where like I was playing through, and then just was like, I dropped my shackles and I'm like, I can't do this. Because the thing is like, I get so stuck on different cases for no reason. Because I feel like, you know, I have some logic about me. Yeah. You know, I feel like I can kind of guess where like a game is going. The evidence that you have to find, that man is not a real lawyer. Like what he says in court and like how they come to the conclusion, I'm like, okay, not only are you like violating everyone's rights,
right? You are reaching.
You are reaching so bad, and so it's kind of hard for me to like. I'll have to play sections over and over and over again because I'm like, I just don't see the connection. So I'm gonna be trying to get my Ace Attorney muscles back in shape, but I don't know. Have you played through the series at all?
So I played it when it first came out on the DS, and I can totally agree. Like, there's so many parts of Ace Attorney And it's almost so effective. It's like, am I smart enough to play this game? Like, that's how it feels.
Yeah, like if it was too realistic though, we'd just like get caught up in bureaucracy. And,
Right.
like, so it's actually taking me as long to finish the game as it would take for an actual court case. So
I also feel that you don't have to deal with the minutia. You just do the most wild stuff possible.
I'm like,
to solve
I
the
have no
case.
idea how you're gonna wrap this up. And then they're like, oh yeah, and here's something we never mentioned
At all.
at all.
At
That's
all.
like getting put into evidence.
It's so silly, but we also love Ace Attorney around here.
I do, and I forgot to mention Ace Attorney does actually have an anime, so
It
maybe
does.
I'll switch
It
over
does.
and just like watch the anime. I want to get to the prequels though, so
Yeah.
we'll see how it goes. Because I want to see if the mechanics change or whatever.
We'll keep you updated.
For sure. Next up, we are sharing all of the headlines from this week, including some amazing moments for Studio Ghibli. And of course, there's some Frieren news, which I'm always happy to talk about Frieren because I think it's one of the most beautiful things that has come out recently. So there's a new attraction for that. So we'll chat about that and a One Piece celebration that is happening next month. All that coming up. All right, so we are in the news portion, but Nick is not here to start us off,
not.
so I get to choose how we start. But I want to talk about the new trailer for Look Back that was just released. It looks so good, and it honestly, I was surprised at the animation style because I first encountered Fujimoto with, of course, Chainsaw Man,
Mm-hmm.
but it shows that he's not a one-trick pony. Like this looks like anyone who has read the one-shot manga that it's based off of, it is kind of like a left turn from like what you would expect from the Chainsaw Man author, you know?
So for those that haven't read it, do you want to give a short descriptor on that one?
Yeah, so it follows the overconfident Fujino and the shut-in Kiyomoto, who are super different, but they have like a shared dream. They both love drawing manga and want to do that for a living and do that when they grow up. So these two like small town girls, it's kind of like a coming of age story, kind of like a finding yourself story.
Okay.
And they are together, learning how to move forward from things that happen in their life. And that's about as close as you can get to it without spoiling it.
Yeah.
Which, we're always constantly tiptoeing that line on this show because
The razor's edge.
Yeah. Have you read the manga?
I have not. I have it pinned on Shonen Jump to read, but
Mhm.
also I have so many things to
I've
read.
been told to kind of hold out for some tears. Like, I think it's going to be a pretty emotional story. But in the trailer, which was just released, we get to hear the movie's main theme, which is super exciting. It's called Light Song by Haruka Nakamura, sung by Urara. It's very pretty. And like, I think the style of it is going to help tell the story because it's very like, I think the art style is very like, this is a movie for artists too.
It's very much in that same vein of like anime and manga that we've been getting recently about people just kind of, I guess, with just talents, like exploring their talent, right? Because what was the jazz one? Blue Giant? Was that the name of it?
Yeah.
And then Blue Period, which is the painting one. So
Blue.
yeah, there's a lot of those going around. I actually like seeing it. It's really cool.
Yeah.
The film is set to release in Japan June 28th. That's very, very soon.
Yeah. So this next one, I definitely want to hear your thoughts on it. Because first of all, okay, so if you haven't heard already, there's like a classic sort of like beat 'em up fighting game called Golden Axe, which I think we've mentioned on the show, like in a recommendation, maybe.
I'm not sure if we have or not. We might have. I don't know. We've done chin shows at this point. So I just go one show to the next.
Well, it was just announced that it has been, there's going to be a 10 episode animated series at Comedy Central, which, by the way, what is going on with Comedy Central? Like, I haven't really seen something come out of there for a while.
I don't know. This is kind of an interesting place for it to land.
Yeah.
I think, honestly, this, that aside, I think this is probably the perfect time and environment for a show like this to come out. So I think this is a response to Critical Role that's been, doing really well on Amazon. I'm actually like a really big fan of Golden Axe, just getting Golden Axe back in any form, to be completely honest with you. Like I absolutely love side-scrolling beat 'em ups, and Golden Axe is one that I, frequented quite often because like, unlike most people, my first system growing up was a Sega Genesis. And like all I played on there was Sonic and like beat 'em up games like Streets of Rage and Golden Axe, and it was my jam. So I'm actually really excited to see how this does, because the game does have a storyline, but it's such a blank slate that you could do like a very like, TV-14.
Yeah. The first Golden Axe game actually debuted in 1989 and has had like a bunch of different sequels and spin-offs since then.
I'm sure I didn't play the game until like 94.
Yeah. As someone who's played the game, like what are you hoping to see in this adaptation?
I want to see just how deep into the D&D-ness of it all that they actually get, right?
Yeah.
Because the game essentially is a D&D campaign for all intents and purposes. So I want to see how deep they actually get into it. And I think more so with any animated kind of show, whether it be anime or Western animation, I'm always excited to see how the cast gels together. Because a show is always going to be as good as your cast can take it. And if their chemistry is phenomenal and it hits all of those comedy beats, then man, it's going to be, I think we'll be in for something really, really cool.
For sure. And what is the release date of this? Did they say?
No, I don't think they've given a specific date, but knowing animation, it's going to be probably within the next 2 years.
We'll
maybe.
keep up with it.
We'll keep you guys updated, I'm sure.
We'll let you know if it's funny. But our sense of humor is so twisted.
Fair.
Now for something that I am personally very excited about, and I wish that this was near us, but unfortunately, I think it's Japan only at this point.
We never get the fun stuff.
There is a Frieren Beyond Journey's End escape room.
It sounds so cool.
Which is inspired by the anime, of course. It's titled Escape from the Thousand-Year Dream, which is, I think, very like on brand and very like
100%.
I don't think it's going to feel out of step from the content of the show. But essentially the plot of this escape room is that it takes place in a dream world where Frieren is trapped by demons, and you have to solve puzzles alongside Frieren, Fern, and Stark to get the grimoire or the ancient text spell book needed to wake up Frieren.
Yeah.
And there's some cute merch
sad.
that's coming out of it too that I know is going to be exclusive. And my heart is aching for that. But the event will include newly recorded lines from the cast of the anime to guide attendees along in their journey. So they're getting that exclusive content too. And I love the Japanese voice actors for Frieren.
Yeah,
I
the
think,
voice cast on both sides is great.
But it just feels good that, the actual cast is involved in this.
Yeah.
I think it's going to give it a really unique flavor. And I hope that we start to see that more and more in the West as well. Like,
absolutely. Even if it's just a timed
immersive
activation.
experiences.
Yeah,
That would be
really
so
pop off.
sick if they had this at AX.
Yeah, it'd be great. It'd be great.
So the One Piece fans are going to be happy about this one, especially the English dub fans, because the latest One Piece English dub batch is hitting Crunchyroll on Luffy's birthday, and that's going to be basically the debut of the English dub of Gear 5.
Yeah.
So are you celebrating anything for Luffy's birthday? Are you going to wear a big hat?
I mean, I don't know how many big hats I have in my collection.
I feel like Nick's already celebrating because he's on an island right now.
Yeah.
So
looking for devil fruit, probably.
But there's a bunch of Crunchyroll is rolling out the carpet for Luffy this year. We're gonna have a bunch of surprises planned for all day on May 5th, which is his birthday. So you can hop onto Crunchyroll on May 5th to experience them for yourself. I'm not going to spoil them. But we also, if you want to know a little bit more about this release, we've got you covered on Crunchyroll News.
I think this is a huge deal because there are some people that only really watch the dub for One Piece.
I mean, there's so many episodes, like it's hard to watch anything else if you're watching One Piece.
For me, because it's like such a great like background show to watch, like, and I kind of already know the story, like I can just kind of, you know, turn it on and, you know, just let the English dub go. But the great thing about this is Gear 5 is you have a lot of moments in anime that are just pivotal, like penultimate moments for not only just the fan base, but for the culture as a whole. And I feel like Gear 5 was one of those ones because it was such a...
Oh, I remember the announcement.
Such a buildup. Yeah. And then when the pressure valve goes off, people are like, oh my God. I actually love, like, people were really kind of... The internet discourse was kind of weird for Gear 5. They're like, why is he so goofy? But Oda
Are we talking about the same person?
Yeah. But
his name literally rhymes with Goofy. Yeah. His name is Luffy.
But, you know, Oda Sensei was like, I love old school, like, Looney Tunes, Hanna-Barbera. Like, and I thought how the most overpowered person you could think of finally reaches his peak. And what does he do? It's a game for him. So I think it's so great that when Gear 5 first showed up, you had the homages to like Tom and Jerry and Bugs Bunny and stuff like that. So I think it's going to be, for all of those people that have been waiting specifically to watch this in the English dub, you guys are in for such a treat.
We actually got a question from a viewer.
Yes.
I know we're jumping up in the rundown.
Questions are jumping a little bit.
But Emperor Zerg 145, shout out the great name. They ask, is introducing my 7-month-old to One Piece a good enough excuse to watch the entire thing over from the beginning?
Absolutely.
My first question is, okay, are you already caught up?
Right.
Because that's insane.
Right. If you're already caught up and you're 1,000+ episodes in, and then you're rewinding back to episode 1.
Yeah, that kid is already gonna be like in 2nd grade by the time you finish again. I'm an advocate. I think you should. It's definitely a kid-friendly show.
Yeah, I also like think that is as speaking as somebody that was introduced to anime at an early age, like I don't think it's ever too early.
Oh yeah, I think the first time I ever encountered One Piece was when it was like really hitting like Saturday morning cartoon vibe. So yeah, I watched it probably at like 5, 6, 7.
Yeah, same. I had to be like 5 or 6 when I first started watching Dragon Ball. Like, it's never too early.
For
never
sure.
too early.
Okay, so this is something that is not a surprise to anybody, but Miyazaki, who, you know, you'll know from legendary Studio Ghibli fame,
the legend,
has been added to Time's annual list of most influential people. And I think that this is kind of timed with the success of The Boy and the Heron, you know, won an Oscar. That was like no surprise. It was, you know, a wonderful moment in like anime history. I think it had been like 20 years since they had won an Oscar previously.
Not bad for a guy that was supposed to retire like 3 films ago.
He will never retire. I keep saying this. Yeah, so Miyazaki was included in the icons section of the list, which again is no surprise. Yep. So Guillermo del Toro, the director, who we've talked about a lot on the show, actually wrote a short personal essay about his experience with Miyazaki films, you know, through childhood into adulthood, how that's, you know, inspired him. He wrote that, you know, in the article. That's big.
It's so great.
You know, we do talk about Guillermo del Toro a lot on this show. And I think it's just really telling that one icon can speak to, you know, the direct effect that another icon has had on his life and work. And the studio itself, like we said, like has had a really big year, winning an Oscar for The Boy and the Heron. And then, you know, has also gotten flowers at the Cannes Film Festival Awards with an honorary Palme d'Or. Sorry, I can't do French. Like, the thing is, like, I've taken French before for like 3 years, and I'm like, I still am like,
I don't get it. I don't get it.
Yeah, je t'aime. But this was the first time for the award to go to a group rather than an individual, because it went to Studio Ghibli. George Lucas with Star Wars will also receive that award alongside Miyazaki. So
what a duo. What a duo.
I know, right?
Miyazaki and Lucas. What
They're
a
two
duo.
sides of like the same coin of influence.
Because I'm sure both of them, respectively, have probably been influenced by each other's work. There's gotta be. There's no way there wasn't. What I know I do appreciate about Hayao Miyazaki is that, like, not only has he established himself as probably one of him and his studio's, like, almost flawless, presentation of animation and the way the characters are designed and the way that they move and stuff like that. And just the storytelling. Again, where did 90% of his ideas come from? I do not know.
Yeah.
But I do understand, like, being an anime fan, I do understand that, like, how important his influence is to the culture as a whole. And and again, not just speaking for anime. I'm talking about, like, film. Right. And even like TV to some aspects. Right. Like, so this is a great moment. And I'm glad it's happening now.
Yeah. There's a lot of cool stuff happening in our lifetime, like for anime.
Yeah.
But yeah, a huge monolith of anime is being given his
due.
He's
not
just
Luffy,
like Luffy,
but he is getting his due.
All right. So next, we finally get to share our conversation with the one and only David Dastmalchian, who was able to join us on one of our out of studio days. So when we snap and you see us in different outfits and from a laptop screen, you'll know why. Right. We're not just gonna like hard cut into it.
No. It's we do one of those transitions, those magical girl transitions, and
Yeah, but let me tell you, he's the coolest guy.
Yeah,
and we chat with him about his newest movie, some of his inspirations, and it's just a really cool conversation. All that coming up. We are here with David Dastmalchian, who you know from The Dark Knight, Suicide Squad, Oppenheimer, Blade Runner 2049, and most recently, Late Night with the Devil. I mean, come on. Welcome to the Anime Effect, David. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
I'm personally extremely excited to have you for a number of reasons. One is because I recently found out that you got your start in Chicago in theater.
True story. Yes.
I'm from Chicago. So,
all right.
And I think like all three of us on the call right now are Midwesterners. So.
Yeah, we are Midwest kids. Yeah, I grew up in Kansas City. We have the
Midwestern tie.
I grew up in Kansas City.
Yeah, see, there you go.
Oh, that's my next question. I was going to ask if you were from Chicago proper, but
no, I grew up in Kansas City in the suburbs, and then when I was ready to go to college, I was almost ready to go to a couple of different places to play football. And I really didn't want to, but it was kind of my ticket to get the education that I was hoping to get. And then some teachers really encouraged me to audition for this program that was in Chicago, an acting program at DePaul University. And I ended up not only getting into the program, I got this great scholarship. So I moved to Chicago when I was 18, and it just completely changed my life. I started to pursue acting in a very serious way, a way I'd never even considered possible before that. I love that town. Some great comic book shops there too.
Oh yeah. That is cool. But yeah, it's great to have that connect. But okay, so you're on the Anime Effect. We, of course, have to talk a little bit about anime. And we have this question that we like to ask our guests just to start out. Nice, icebreaker.
Sure.
What was your gateway anime? Like, what was your first kind of encounter with the medium?
I'm trying to think, because I was thinking about that, knowing I was going to come on here. And I feel like it was probably, if it qualifies as such, Vampire Hunter D was probably the thing that
oh yeah, absolutely,
really grabbed me. Like Aeon Flux and a bunch of stuff when I was young that was coming on late night was capturing my fascination. But Vampire Hunter D just was like, because I'm a monster kid and I was already a big comic book collector and I loved animation. I loved cartoons, and so then when I saw an ad for Vampire Hunter D, I tracked it down as quickly as possible, and then just kind of fell in love with that space and that world.
Can I say it seems very on brand for you?
Yeah, absolutely.
To choose Vampire Hunter
I think
D.
most of my anime go-tos are probably, you're going to be like, yeah, no kidding. But, that's all right.
They're just layups.
Yeah, I definitely feel the aesthetic connect there.
And I think manga as well, because they're so linked in so many ways. There was something about... when I first started to, and I'm not nearly as huge of either a manga or anime devotee as my son is. And it's been really fun, like going on the journey with him now and rediscovering stuff or discovering things for the first time. Because some of my anime proclivities are a little more obscure and I don't feel like many people get into them as much. So it's always fun when you got a kid who's like all hyped out about stuff that's a little more mainstream, because I just am not as exposed to that stuff. And it's
that's so
it's
awesome.
Rad going on the One Piece journey with him. Like that's something that I never probably would have stumbled upon if it hadn't been for my kid just being like, Dad, oh my God. Duh. And then now I'm like, oh, this is amazing. I love this world.
Guess we got to watch it now.
Yeah, One Piece has definitely captured that entire generation.
Yeah, sure. It's so cool to see.
But I'll say the thing that followed up with Vampire Hunter, and then obviously all of, I as a cinema guy going and seeing Miyazaki stuff on the big screen and then going, I want more of this. So then following a rabbit hole through the internet and discovering and DVDs a lot, actually. I used to get a lot of stuff at like a cool or offbeat rental place when I was in Chicago and in Brooklyn as well that had a lot of cool anime stuff. But I'd say the first time I couldn't stop and there was just not enough content. You know that feeling when you're like, why isn't there more of this? The show is so good. And there's certain shows where there's 10,000 episodes. And then there's ones where it's like, you can only find seasons 1 and 4, and you're pulling your hair out trying to be like, I've never pirated anything, but I'll steal it if I have to. That was how I felt when I started to get really hooked on Black Butler, that I think is just incredible.
Oh, it's coming back.
Yeah.
It's coming back. Like
he's like, I'm on top of it. I got it.
I'm very excited.
After like a 10-year hiatus.
Yeah. One of my dear friends who's in Germany messaged me the other day. It was just all caps. David,
Black
Butler is back. And I was like,
I love it.
Because, if you go to an anime shop or if you go to a place, you're going to find tons of cool Death Note stuff and My Hero stuff and a bunch of awesome stuff that I love. It's just, I want like a phone case, of Sebastian. Because I want to do a live action adaptation. I want a live action adaptation someday and be like,
this guy.
Yes, Seal, what can I do for you?
I have to ask, you play a lot of erratic and eccentric, over-the-top characters.
Erratic.
Has your love for anime, has that impacted, any of the characters that you have played over the course of your career?
Certainly. It depends on the tone of the show. I don't feel like I've had actually enough opportunities to get to explore the inspiration that I take from that style of both storytelling and performance, because as we know, it's so different than what we're generally provided in Western entertainment. And another thing that's important to note is I've also been just obsessed with the country of Japan and Japanese culture since I was in high school. And I actually studied Japanese in high school. And I have a comic book actually coming out soon that is very steeped in Japanese history called Knights versus Samurai, which would make an amazing anime someday, whoever's listening. But I do think about the impact that all the media that I consume has on me. But I was just thinking about this the other day. It was like, I really believe there are a number of anime adaptations that haven't yet occurred or that are maybe occurring soon, where it's like, I really feel like if I had the opportunity to play in that space, I think I could bring something really dynamic and fun to it. It's a challenge that I would love to live up to because, as you guys know, just the way facial reactions are generally expressed, there's an extremity to emotion and action and expression that almost reminds me of like Italian commedia dell'arte type of theater. And I don't know. I feel like we need the live action Vampire Hunter D starring David Dastmalchian. I'm just going to put that up. Or I don't know what it is, actually. I think it's black, but I really do want to play Sebastian. I don't know what studio would ever approve that.
I would cast you.
Whack. That show is so
it is
crazy, y'all. If you know it, you know what I'm talking about.
We're putting
and I
it
don't
out
even
there.
care because I love it. It's weird.
And you have played a vampire hunter at this point. So you talk about Vampire D.
Just go ahead and add it.
But okay, speaking of like eccentric characters. So I saw Late Night with the Devil, literally the day it came to my local theater because I was so excited for this project. So one thing I really loved about this film was the use of practical effects. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure like a lot of the effects in this film were sort of the era that it's taking place, which I love. You and I were both horror fans. So what was it like to kind of work in like a time capsule almost with the camera work and the effects?
Well, you're absolutely correct. You're 100% correct. All of the stuff that we utilized was 100% practical, hands-on effects. There was a very, very small budget for the film that we made. And so knowing that there wasn't going to be this opportunity to plug hundreds of thousands of dollars into VFX, post-production, artistry, we had to accomplish so much there on set and worked with just an incredible special effects makeup team that just nailed it. I've gotten the privilege of working with a lot of people who are in that space and are so talented, and they love what they do so much. They love getting the latex and the blood and all of the little cinema tricks to make something look like someone's guts are spilling out. Like there's worms wriggling out of a hole in someone's neck, or there's a giant, creature popping through someone's eyeball. Being in the presence of that when you're shooting the scenes is so awesome because there's a texture to it, there's smell to it, there's a whole feeling of the tactile nature that it's so cool to play with. And it felt like we were back in the 70s, like trying to make a John Carpenter film, with real practical effects, getting to work in a space that felt like those 70s horror movies.
Mm-hmm. And what were the challenges with that too? That's also what I want to know is, when you are working in a time capsule like that, there's a lot of easy way outs we take in film nowadays. So, what were some of the blocks? Sure.
Well, I'd say one of the things that was the hardest for me was because I really wanted to demonstrate the difference between Jack in front of the camera and Jack behind the camera. And so Jack in front of the camera needed to feel like an authentic 1970s late night talk show host who those folks had their own, just like we were talking about in The Power of Anime, there was their own sound, their own rhythm, their own way of presenting jokes and interviews that's just very different than the way we would do stuff today. And it had to be very careful because just like if I'm going to get the opportunity to bring ectoplasm to life in the My Hero Academia like live action show, I can't go over the top that it feels like it's some kind of, I don't know, your performance can't feel like it's too big because then people will check out. It has to feel grounded. It has to feel realistic. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I don't know. That was really hard. That was a big challenge. And then capturing that 70s aesthetic, the biggest hurdle for me was feeling like I could capture the tone of that without making people who watch it feel like they're watching a sketch or like an impression of the 70s. Because we really needed this film to feel almost like you at home found the lost tapes
Right.
of this episode that
Right.
never got to remain because they burned the tapes.
Yeah, and it did. Yeah.
It's got to feel like that. So it was scary, you guys. It was hard.
Yeah, it's almost like a new take on found footage. Yeah.
It is. And I love the found footage genre. I love the horror genre. I love the 70s, like period piece genre.
Mm-hmm.
This movie is comedy as well. It's a weird movie. And I can't tell you how lucky I feel that so many people have responded so well to the film. It's like, it's kind of mind-blowing. I always knew that we made something really cool. We were making something really cool, but it's like, it's a very strange feeling to all of a sudden have it go in the world. And you're like, wow, people are hitting me up from all over the place, just being like, I love this movie. And it's a great feeling.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And real quick, cause I have to ask, I mean, just the whole, where did that idea come from? Like the whole, let's make a found footage-esque talk show.
I give all the credit to the mind of Colin and Cameron Cairns. They are the writing, directing duo, the brothers who are from Australia. They've made a couple of independent horror features before this that tonally are really excellent films, and they're very great with tone. But these guys, just like me, grew up addicted to reading Fangoria magazine, watching 70s and 80s horror, thinking that movies like, Halloween and The Howling were just like, oh. And so I think the idea of being trapped in a space, 90-minute live television broadcast where there is no looking away, was this wonderful opportunity to create attention for a space in which the people behind the scenes are going, I think we should stop now. And the guy at the front of the train, which is me, going, keep it running, keep it running, keep it running. It was really smart. They're wonderful guys too. Everybody was so wonderful working on the project. I mean, truly, I'm spoiled with an amazing group of people around me.
Speaking of people that you have worked around, you've worked with a lot of amazing directors, from Denis Villeneuve for both Dune and Blade Runner 2049, which I absolutely love. Christopher Nolan for Oppenheimer, and then, of course, The Dark Knight as well, and then James Gunn for Suicide Squad. What is it like, being a part of an iconic set of directors and playing roles in those films as well?
It's hard to relax at first because you're in the presence of someone who is exceptional and, kind of landmark in their talents. And yet you have to, because if you are in your head going, oh my gosh, I'm making a superhero movie with James Gunn right now, and you freak yourself out, you could psych yourself out. It's like being an athlete. You kind of have to disassociate in a way and trust your skills, your hard work, your abilities, be as present as possible, breathe, and then just trust them. They picked you for a reason. So you have to trust that like you're there for a reason, and just be as present as possible.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. And so lastly, because I know we only have you for a little bit more time, we mentioned that, we're horror fans. You're a horror fan. I saw recently you named like your top 5. I know how the classic Halloween was among those. Did you sort of, when you were, first getting into film, even, right after the Batman of it all, did you mean to sort of fall into this horror movie kind of sci-fi genre? Like, was that your intention
wild.
Going in?
It's really wild if you think about it. The fact that I'm living in nerdvana. That's what my friend Ash Crossan calls it. She's like, you have achieved nerdvana. I do think there's something to energetically, not to be too woo-woo, but the idea that I have loved comics and genre so much, and I also love the art of storytelling, acting, and writing so much that like maybe my sensor, my energy was driven that way. But you guys, I mean, I'm an actor, and actors are at the mercy of what audition is presented and who wants to work with you. And when you're lucky enough to like be in the right place at the right time, it's like, I wish I could say that the architecture of my career was so intentional, but much of it is relied upon the fact that I've just tried to gravitate towards and magnetize myself towards people who make incredible stories. And maybe they can smell it on me. You know, maybe it's like my nerd cologne is very strong. It's kind of like
I love it.
The Jedi. They can source out the midichlorians within me and they go, this guy, he is. Because it's fun when I'm on the set of something genre and the other actors maybe aren't huge fans and they can look at me as a bit of a resource, you know? So when we're making the Black Butler movie or TV series, hopefully people will come to me on the side and be like, great work today, Butler. But why is my character screaming every time there's a vegetable brought in or whatever? I could be really fun to like, yeah, I'd like to be the resource.
So what you're saying is it's not totally out of the realm of possibility that we might see you in like a nerdy romantic comedy someday.
Oh, whatever is, it's just the people, you guys, after the pandemic and after these last number of years, the crud that we had to survive going back, you know, starting a few years ago was like, I just looked around and I go, life is so short. Who am I going to spend my time with? And it's genuinely like the people that I get the opportunity and the privilege of spending time telling stories with. That's the ultimate decision maker. If it happens to be a cool genre piece, I'm all the more lucky for it. Like right now, we're making an adaptation of the Murderbot Diaries book series that Paul and Chris Weitz have created for Apple, and it's just going to work every day. It's like being in the company of family and being in, you know, the comfort of friends. And that's how I wish all of us could spend our working days.
Preach.
I agree. All right. I know your time is short and we have to let you go.
Thank you guys.
Oh, thank you so much, David. We really appreciate you, man.
Yeah. Thank you so much. The wonderful David Dastmalchian. Thank you so much for joining us. You're welcome back anytime. Next time we can just like have a full horror movie episode and just talk about our favorites. But thank you so much for your time. And everybody go see Late Night with the Devil. It is such a unique and cool film to be made. It just entered streaming last week exclusively on Shudder. So everybody check it out.
And we are magically back in a set of different clothes. Magic trick.
Genie smoke.
We thank you, David. He was awesome.
Such a cool guy.
Glad he joined us.
Yeah.
Definitely
welcome back anytime. Friend of the show.
Come and hang out. But we're going to transition now into recommendations.
Yes, a very, very fun part of the show. So what are some of the things you've been up to this weekend and liking?
All right. Wrestling Soapbox is back. AEW Dynasty happened this weekend. Is it one of their best shows? Probably not, but they had a lot
You're really selling it.
But it had a lot of really great spots for this particular pay-per-view. And I want to call out two matches here because they were probably the two most important and what the show was built around. The dream match of all dream matches between Will Ospreay and Bryan Danielson. You want to talk about the most anime-ass match that you will ever see. And the crowd was already hot going into it. Like, they were like,
I've never seen a calm wrestling crowd, so I believe you.
So just imagine what you've known to be a hype wrestling crowd and just amp that up and break the knob off. Like just turn it all the way up to 10 and break it off and
to 11.
Yeah. But they were so incredibly hot from the start. Ospreay and Danielson are probably two of the best in-ring guys, just bell to bell. And these guys just shut it down. Like they were selling each other's moves like crazy. Do
they still do like the chair and the table gigs?
Yeah, like chairs and tables. They weren't in this match.
I'm so out of touch with wrestling.
They weren't in this match particularly, but I mean, they played to the audience so well. They played to each other so well. Like a large part of wrestling is the story that the athletes can tell in the ring, and they told a fantastic story.
Yeah, that's one thing I do know about wrestling. It is like they craft these characters and storylines over years and
they
years.
Told
and
an incredible story.
Yeah.
Even down to the ending when like literally like think about the most like the really and somebody put this on Twitter, but it was like imagine when Vegeta and Goku at the end of the Saiyan saga were like both charging up and like getting ready to go.
Yeah, epic.
Like these guys were in opposite corners teeing up their finishing moves to see who was going to be the first one to meet to the middle.
I'm gonna have to see that because that sounds phenomenal.
Absolutely fantastic. If I can find a clip, I'll show it to you. But it's absolutely great. And then also want to shout out Swerve. He is the first Black AEW champion.
Dude, his name is Swerve.
Yeah, Swerve
That's actually
Strickland.
sick.
He's great.
Swerve what?
Swerve Strickland.
That's cool.
Yeah, he's got a really cool name.
At first, I thought you said Swerve Strictly, and I'm like, that's also really cool.
Great. But him and Samoa Joe, who was the former champion, had an absolute banger of a match. So if you guys love battle anime in any kind of way, shape, or form, those two matches will really they'll get you going.
And Nemesis.
Oh yeah, definitely. So yeah, that was look, that was my weekend. So case in point, probably go watch some Dragon Ball. That's gonna give you the closest that you're gonna get to this wrestling thing right now. What's your recommendation for this week?
Oh man, this one is kind of easy, and I feel like we talked about it a little bit last week, but Kaiju number 8. I'm watching it every week. And
so good.
I had the opportunity to, start catching up on the manga.
Yep.
That was, that big stack.
Part of your big pile. Yeah.
The big pile that I'm trying to work through right now of secondhand manga. It is very manga accurate, which I like.
Very manga accurate.
And I was wondering, even the things that aren't, the way that they did it visually is so funny, when they're running away from the hospital and he has to go to the bathroom. Oh, that's so funny.
The bit gags in this show, I am so surprised at how much they match the source material. Because usually you see a lot of that stuff stripped out, but they leave it because it's
buddy comedy material.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so funny. I love their dynamic of the two main characters. So yeah, I've been watching that. Super funny when he's oh no, the old man is scared. Why don't you try to smile? And he smiles. It's the most horrific
big,
monster.
Toothy smile. Yeah.
So people who aren't familiar, Kaiju number 8 is about this guy who, lives in a world where kaiju attacks are super normal, and he works on the cleanup squad and has to dismantle these giant monsters every week. But his real, hope and dream is to join his childhood best friend on the defense force, which kills them and doesn't, have to clean up afterwards. So they get all the glory, but none of the guts.
Right. It's a good way to put it.
Yeah, he is getting one last chance to join the defense squad. Because he's an older character. He's 33.
Shout out to older main characters in anime
32,
and manga. Yeah, he's 32. Because our guy. Shout out to the older protagonists.
It's fun. Yeah. And the character design is so good.
Oh, it's so great. The production IG did such a good job.
Yeah,
with this.
I'm very happy with the adaptation. I think it looks super cool. And seeing the characters come to life right after you read it. That's one of my favorite things is starting to catch up on a manga right as it's releasing episodes. Because then I have a chance to get to the chapter.
Yeah.
Because up until right now, I think we're almost done with the first manga for the first 2 episodes.
Yeah, I think so.
But yeah, definitely that. And then, of course, the Spy Family movie just came out in theaters.
I'm going to go see it this weekend.
You have to see it. It's super cute. We'll talk about it in a future episode because I bet that Nick's going to see it too. We can kiki about that. But yeah, those are my 2 recommendations. I'm going away from my which is so funny because we just talked to David, but I'm sort of going away from my normal
horror destruction
vibe back into fun family comedy. So yeah.
Well, that's
I ebb and flow.
I like this. All right. Those are our recs. Now it's time for the mailbag.
Mailbag. Okay, so this first one comes from Baka Anime Aniki. You're not Baka. Out there, you're not Baka.
You're not.
Wow, was that cringe?
No.
It's okay. I'm at a point in my life where I'm gonna start just embracing my cringe. I think like cringe is happy, cringe is content.
You know.
And I'm happy to be cringe, and I will be cringe publicly from now on. Anyway, they ask, how old must a good anime be to consider a remaster? Example, Death Note. Is it 20, 30, 50 years? Or just redo the second half? Pray emoji.
Usually, because what I've noticed in working with anime is that big anniversaries happen in tens, right? Like they may say, oh, hey, 5 is a big deal because, 5 is always going to be a milestone, right? But decades is usually where it's, counted the heaviest. I want to say it usually starts at the 10-year, right? Like if you're in a pocket to where your anime or manga has lasted up to the 10 years of the popularity has carried it into its 10th year anniversary where people are like still activated and talking about it, I think that's honestly where it starts.
Really? Because I would say because Death Note was 2007. They've tried to do so many Death Note remakes, like live action and stuff. To me, I love the concept musical album of Death Note, but that's a whole other thing. It is a jam. Okay. And then you have something like Monster, which I think is like 2004. It's a little bit earlier than Death Note. But that one has a clearly different animation style. It looks a little bit more how we envision like a quote, like a classic anime. And I think that's something that then could get, there's enough time that has passed that it could then like the story itself is really interesting. I think it could carry into a modernization very well. Like most detective things can, like integrate modern technology, yada, yada.
And it sounds really cool outside of that. Yeah.
Because I feel like if you reach a point where the anime style is so drastically different, like for example,
super outdated.
Yeah, we talked about Devilman Crybaby. If you look at the original
Devilman,
it kind of looks like very like Astro Boy-ish. Yeah. I don't know.
Like you can
very
realize
classic old anime.
It's good because it has that classic look, but at the same time, it's been 30, 40, 50 years before. Yeah.
And I think like if enough time has come to breathe where there can also be a new cultural context too.
I think so.
And you can refresh it or tell it in modern time. I think that will make it maybe not necessarily more successful, but more interesting to see the changes.
Yeah. And I think it's where the industry ends up being sometimes too, is like, hey, there's an anime that we still feel can be super relevant within this pocket. And we just think it's time for it to just be reintroduced to new people.
There are so many shows, like great shows that got canceled or kind of the manga didn't keep up with the adaptation. Right. So I think we see that with like FMA, Full Metal Alchemist. Like that one got a reboot. And I don't think 10 years went by between those. And it was kind of like more closely tied to the source material.
Yeah. And that's honestly why you see a lot of remakes or reboots happening too, is that because the source material is finished, they can actually go back and tell the true story, which, we've talked about on the show before. Like Soul Eater is a big one that like, for me, that I would love to see get like a reboot because it's finished now. So you can actually continue that story.
But yeah, that's an interesting question.
From Female Snowy Fox, what is your favorite anime that either had a new season this year and or just released this year?
You want to go first? I feel like mine is already obvious. Like, it's Kaiju number 8. It's Buchigiri. Like, it's Metallic Rouge. I think those are like my big 3 for this past year so far.
I would say, if we're talking about one that's returning, Slime. Like, which is, it's been great. Like, it's funny because Slime is not a like super like dense heavy show.
No, it's a good watch. It's just an easy watch.
It's just an easy, fun watch. So definitely that one. Windbreaker, which is a new one for this season that I actually like. I started reading the manga and actually like really, really loved it.
That one was
like,
pretty anticipated, right?
Yeah. That one, Solo Leveling, of course.
Yeah.
Like,
I can't believe I didn't say Solo Leveling. I brought it up earlier, but yeah.
And then one that didn't really check on my radar, but I watched because I saw the first episode at a premiere we did at a convention was the Unwanted Undead Adventurer.
Oh, yeah.
Like that one wasn't on my radar at all. And I just finished it like 2 weeks ago. And I was like, oh, wow. This was pretty good.
Mhm.
But I think I'm also
That was kind of like a switch for you. I feel like the genre.
because I usually like I'm finding myself being into more of the fantasy anime, like outside of like the isekai part of it. Like I'm talking just pure like fantasy anime, right? Because I was watching that one, and then Delicious in Dungeon has also been a favorite of mine, which I could also add to this list as well. And then I'm gonna start queuing up Frieren now that it's over, so I can just like binge it, because one of my buddies was like, dude, if you start now, you're just gonna hate yourself. So I'm actually like, those have probably been my favorites.
Thanks, female Snowy Fox. Those were some fun questions this week. And, continue to write into us. We love to see your comments, what you're watching, because we have taken some of your recommendation advice. It's cool to see
questions.
Questions, Rex,
we'll
Mailbag. So keep reaching out every week. And we love to hear from you.
All right, y'all. That is it. That is it. Next time you see us, you'll see Nick will be back
with a suntan or a sunburn,
and we'll all be back in our normal seated positions.
I never move. I'm like people can move around me.
Leah
I'll never
moves.
I'm a rock.
I'm the one that has to move. But no, thank you for joining us for another episode of The Anime Effect, brought to you by Crunchyroll and the folks over at Sony Music Entertainment. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode.
For sure. Crunchyroll Presents The Anime Effect is hosted by me, Leah President, LeAlec Murray, and Nicholas Friedman. We are executive produced by Jonathan Hirsch, Shara Morris, Alex Lawless, and Nicholas Friedman. You already know. Our lead producer is Kyla Carnero, and our associate producer is Zoe Culkin. Patrick Emile edited and mixed this episode's audio, and Tyler Lucas filmed and edited the video. Our head of production is Sammy Allison, and a special thanks to Tamika Balance Glasney. We'll be back next week with even more anime, so, of course, we'll see you then.
Thanks, guys. Later, day.
Later. See
Go
ya.
watch The Weekenders if you don't know where that's from. just point it out. Thanks, y'all.
Peace. Oh, and I see you put your name as David Monster, so...
I guess that's from a previous... I do Riverside a lot for different interviews and stuff, so I think that's existed. That's in all my devices. It's all my stuff. Isn't that funny? It used to be Daddy Monster, because my kids like that, but then I realized when I was doing like interviews and stuff, it was a little weird, so...
Yeah, it gets weird, yeah.